The Apothecary Diaries is a series about making
drugs.
That is what I assumed when I cooked up this fever dream of a thumbnail. After all, the word apothecary is one I'd wager most of us haven't encountered outside of our mandated high school reading of Romeo and Juliet. To that end, the only thing that character does in the play is facilitate the tragic twist at the end by providing Romeo with what else but poison. In general, though, the term does call to mind a bygone era, not just because of the prior example, but it's also just not a word that is used much outside of those settings or maybe fantasy, which also implies its own air of unfamiliarity, because the profession isn't exactly practiced anymore, or at least it goes by a different name. And so hearing the title of a show is The Apothecary Diaries, I thought that maybe would be in reference to a journal with entries of different elixirs or particular ailments, and stories of how 𝔻ℝ𝕝 came by discovering them. And while the series definitely does involve the occasional crafting of concoctions for medicinal or other reasons, the series is a far cry from whatever the hell my thumbnail is implying.
Say my name. You're goddamn right.
That being said, I do think there is something revealing about my and perhaps your own assumptions that the Apothecary Diaries was going to be more about the art of the trade, and less the Chinese-inspired court politics period piece that seems to take center stage instead. Because while the series doesn't delve into poison and medicine to the same detail that a Dr. Stone might, there is certainly an air of death that permeates the narrative. And perhaps that is appropriate given what's prevalent about the profession of an apothecary. Herbs and the like can alleviate pain and help heal, but there's something that is so final about the fact that they can also just as easily take life. Especially so during time periods like the one the series takes place in. Life just ends up feeling so much more fragile. And this unmistakable air of death is one that feels apt, given not only 𝔻ℝ𝕝's position as court apothecary, but as someone whose life could be snuffed out on a whim should the emperor will it.
帝の言葉は天上の言葉。断ったりしたら首が飛びかねない。
This is a reality she is not ignorant of, and I think that makes her decisions to help even when doing so might not be in her best interest, all the more significant for her character. In fact, the inciting incident which allows her to rise to ever so slightly higher in the hierarchy of the rear palace is one such example of helping simply because she believes it's the right thing to do. And it's a decision which unintentionally brings her closer to several people, the Emperor included. As such, she now runs a greater risk of disappointing or failing these powerful individuals than if she had just remained some nameless servant girl. There is something darkly poetic about 𝔻ℝ𝕝's knowledge of poison bringing her unwittingly closer to death's embrace. Likewise, her new role as lady-in-waiting to one of the Emperor's concubines is one which involves tasting her food for poison, because again, court politics. It'd be weird if they went a week without an assassination attempt. To be clear though, this is a role she relishes, perhaps too much. Okay, definitely too much. But as we later see, it's not as if 𝔻ℝ𝕝 is suicidal or even apathetic about her station in life, yet this role is one that has her staring down death during potentially every meal. It's an infatuation, no doubt, but one she is unmistakably aware of and the consequences it could have. All of this works in the series' favor when paired with the intrigue of the court politics, because surprise surprise, a lot of the plot lines in one way or another have dealt with death. One of the Emperor's newborn children dies, one of his concubines is on the verge of dying, one servant is drowned, a guard is poisoned, and even less intense ordeals can involve death in some way or another, such as the case of a master craftsman passing on the secret of his trade to his 3 sons after his passing. Apothecary Diaries is a series steeped in death from every angle, and that allows the storylines to weave together in an understated but thematically appropriate fashion. The series doesn't glorify these deaths, but likewise, I don't think it treats them with the gravity you might expect. At least not from most characters. Instead, I think it looks at death as an inevitable part of the human experience. And this realism is reflected in 𝔻ℝ𝕝 understanding just how fragile life, especially hers, is. Again, I think that understanding is a big part of what makes her such an appealing character. She exists as someone who is aware of how powerless she is, but doesn't use that as an excuse not to act when she can. It gives her this undeniable charm that would elevate any show, but the circumstances she exists in likewise elevate her as a character. It's a hell of a combo that is more rare than you might expect, and I think it's one of the things that makes Apothecary Diaries work so well. I could go on to try and dissect in greater detail what makes this show so appealing, but there are other people out there who have already put it better, and in a significantly more timely manner than this video, whose genesis was a very dumb Photoshop and subsequent tweet. That's not to say I don't enjoy talking about it either, I just think this particular well has run a bit dry. Which is in and of itself a bit interesting, no? That the show, which centers around a profession to the point where said profession is literally in its name, would be the least substantial point of discussion or analysis. It'd be like if the most interesting thing about Demon Slayer, for example, was how the Hashira were taxed in the Taisho period of Japan. Just kinda random food for thought. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed whatever the hell this video was. Until next time, which I have no idea when that will be, but I hope to see you then. This video is probably not gonna do well. So, extra thank you if you made it this far. Bye for real now.